Time for us to talk about our main event of the evening, and it's a rematch from UFC 243. Israel Adesanya, our middleweight champion, is taking on Robert Whittaker, the man he beat to win the belt over in Australia. Betting odds for this one, you can get Adesanya at minus 280. Whittaker comes in at plus 225. It was a pick'em the first time they fought over in Australia. Interestingly, the ANZAC poll, they have Adesanya for this one 57%, Whittaker 43%, and that gap has been closing ever since we uploaded that poll. Now, when it comes to MMA, John, I always believe that there's two types of fight in terms of the way they play out. There's either a match which fighter A wins or a match fighter B loses. Like if we use, say, Nunes versus Pena, for example, that was a fight Nunes lost rather than one that Juliana won. I bring this up because I rewatched the first fight between Whittaker and Adesanya. And even though Izzy deserves the credit for his part in that fight, Robert Whittaker was not his best at all in that match. And in my opinion, the way he fought created a rod for his own back.
Yeah, I mean, I think he fought, pretty terribly there. He was just getting way too aggressive. What really cost him the fight was extending in long combinations in the pocket. He probably thought that he would have, the pocket advantage versus Izzy, but Izzy absolutely shocked me with that short power in his punches in those fights. I mean, the punch he dropped him at the end of round one with, the punch that eventually led to the finishing sequence. I mean, those were tight combinations in the pocket. Not exactly something Izzy was known for. I mean, he's known as more of like an outside striker. Maybe he'll hurt you with a knee or a head kick, but he's not really known for dropping people with punches. And he really shocked us and showed off some of his own boxing power in that fight versus Rob. But, Rob, like I said, he just hung out in the pocket too long. He was in extended combinations. He knows what he has to work on. Very smart guy. And, just right off the bat, I trust him to make, the right adjustments. I think he's going to look at the fight objectively, know what he did wrong. He's not going to go in making the same mistakes. And, he's looked fantastic since that fight, right? It's not like we're dealing with a guy who might be past his prime, who has looked slower and slower in his past few fights. I mean, the guy has looked at his all-time best, beaten Cannonier and Gastelum. The Till fight wasn't his greatest performance, but I mean, he's put out three, very solid decision wins since then, and I don't think he slowed down a step. So, with the betting line for this one, did you mention it already? The current line, like you said, the
I
last one was a
did.
pick 'em.
Izzy at minus 280, Whittaker plus 225.
Yeah. So I mean, the first fight, Whitaker, I think when the fight started, he was a slight underdog, maybe like 48% or something like that. And now he's below 33%. So, I mean, it's a huge, huge change. And I honestly am under the belief that no human being on earth, possibly no fighter in history should be over 70% versus Robert Whitaker. I mean, Whitaker is a fantastic fighter, and I just think that 70% or above is disrespecting how great this guy has been. I think, yeah, Izzy's at like 72, like you said, minus 280. That's almost 75%, which I think is just a little bit wide here. So I'll pass it back to you before I give like my official thoughts.
What do you think was the biggest reason behind the way Whittaker fought in the first fight? Do you think that he saw some of the success that Kelvin Gastelum had and tried to replicate that game plan? Did Izzy get into his head? Was the moment a bit too much? 60,000 people in Australia. Why do you think he chose that approach? It was very unlike Robert Whittaker.
Yeah, I mean, I think he probably figured the best way to get to outstrike this guy is to get aggressive, get in his face, box him up. I definitely think that probably the huge crowd, could have played a factor into it. But he just made a tactical error, right? I mean, he approached the fight in the wrong way. He paid for it via getting knocked out, and I think that he's going to approach it in a much more strategic way, a much more patient way, because Izzy tends to kind of like match the tempo that you give him, right? Look at the Romero fight. If Romero was standing at distance, barely doing anything, Izzy kind of did the same thing, and it left some openings for Izzy to get caught there. I mean, I haven't rewatched the fight because it was so boring, but a lot of people actually scored that fight for Romero. I forget which rounds, 1, 3, and 5 or something. But I mean, not a whole lot happened in that fight, and it isn't out of the realm of possibility that Yoel did edge 3 of those rounds. So if Robert approaches the fight more patiently, takes what the fight gives him, doesn't just charge at Izzy and give him so many opportunities to counter, I think the fight's going to go a lot better for him.
I think the big weapon that Rob's going to have to utilize is his wrestling, because obviously we're seeing Whittaker have fantastic hands, very good at concealing his offense. But a lot of people don't realize this with Whittaker. He is a very, very good grappler. I think he tried to represent Australia at the Commonwealth Games, something like that, in wrestling. So
Hmm.
he's got some grappling ability to him. And we have seen Adesanya be taken down before, and especially we saw it with the Jan Blachowicz fight. If you get him in the center of the cage, that's where I think some of Izzy's grappling failings come into the fore. Because if you're sort of like trying to do the same thing that Marvin Vettori was, the mistake Vettori did was it was clinching up against the fence and trying to go for that single leg and drag him down. Izzy's going to cover those every day of the week. But shooting in from open space, that's one of his failings, in my opinion.
Yeah. So you mentioned him getting stuck on his back. Yeah, I mean the dude has gotten taken down several times in his past 2 fights against Jan. He got taken down twice in those later rounds, and I think he got taken down 3 or 4 times by Vettori. And I was actually rewatching the Vettori Izzy rematch, and I didn't remember Vettori getting such good positions in the grappling. Like in the first round, he caught a leg kick and got top position. He got 2 takedowns later in the rounds where Izzy was flat on his back, but Vettori just completely blew those opportunities. I mean, his jiu-jitsu looked shit. He went for a back take one time, got way too sloppy and loose, and ended up getting reversed. I mean, he had Izzy flat on his back 3 times and achieved nothing with it. So I mean, he really boofed that opportunity there. But I feel like Izzy's takedown defense might have hit its ceiling. Like it might have plateaued a little bit. I mean, it was steadily improving, up until 2019, 2020. But I feel like maybe, he has stopped training it as much. But I feel like, it might be at its all time best. It might not be getting any better. And we did see Vittori hit a few takedowns. So I think that Rob would be wise to mix in some takedowns here. I think that he needs to just lay in half guard, lay on top. Jan Blachowicz just laid on top in half guard and full guard and just didn't do him too much. And that was perfect because Izzy couldn't get up. He just put all of his weight on him. And Vettori tried getting way too crazy. He, felt the moment of getting on top. He went for too much and he lost the position. So if Rob can get some takedowns, lay on top for a few minutes, I mean, he could steal some rounds that way, and I definitely think that Rob needs to mix in needs to mix in some wrestling. He needs to come with a different, more versatile approach.
And in terms of Adesanya, obviously he got the win first time around. If he wants to make it 2-0, what do you think are the best attributes he's going to want to utilize? Because there have been some people who think that Whittaker's quite foot heavy. Could we maybe see Izzy utilizing some leg kicks a bit more?
Yeah, I'm thinking. Yeah, maybe some long range kicks, maybe that front kick up the middle, maybe some of those like oblique kicks that like John Jones likes to utilize. Um, Yeah, I mean, I think that he's gotta make some range tools work for him because I do think that Rob's gonna be more patient, and I think that Izzy needs to, initiate those combinations early on, initiate some of those longer kicks, his head kicks and whatnot. Maybe try to time some knees up the middle like he likes to do when Whitaker comes in. But that's a good question. I haven't really been thinking too much about the Izzy side. I'm really more focused on Rob and he's the loser. He's the one who needs to make the major adjustments. And Rob is, an over 2-1 underdog, which I am interested. I think this one, I see it more like 65% for Israel, while the odds have him 73, 74. So I do think it is a bit off here, and I'll definitely be cheering for Bobby Knuckles to get off the upset victory. I'm not confident in him to do so, but if he comes in more patient, if he mixes in some takedowns, I think he's capable of pulling it off. So hopefully Rob can get it done. I'm a big fan of Whittaker. I mean, I like Izzy, but I like Rob a lot better, and would just love to see him get his belt back.
I think there is a lot of value in picking a Whittaker win. I think if you're going for the common sense approach, Adesanya's the safe bet. But there is
Hmm.
definitely an avenue for Whittaker to win this one, especially if he utilizes the wrestling.
I think we're gonna see this one go the distance this time, and I feel like it's gonna be 3 rounds to 2 on either side. I think we're gonna have, a competitive matchup when it hits the scorecards. Um, and yeah, I mean that'll be my official like prediction is this one does go the distance. I don't have like a an extreme confident read on either side. Like I said, I think it'll be 48-47 on either side, and I'll be rooting for Whitaker to get it done.
And I think you've made a really good point as well. You just actually brought it up that obviously we're going to be in Houston, Texas. And Houston and the Texas State Athletic Commission are notorious for being a little bit left field when it comes to some of their judges' calls. Could we maybe
Mhm.
see a controversial decision either way in this one?
Yeah, that is possible. I mean, the Andrea Lee Lauren Murphy fight sticks out. Lee outstrikes there for 4 minutes around. Murphy lands a takedown in the last 30 seconds, and then Murphy wins the scorecard. So maybe a late Whitaker takedown could seal some important rounds here and sway that judge's decision his way. But I just think, like I said, really reiterate it. Robert Whitaker, I don't think any human being should be over 70% against him in an MMA fight. I think, just a fantastic, underrated fighter, a great grappler, one of the best defensive wrestlers ever. Watch that Yoel Romero fight, and just an elite striker, too. So, don't count Whitaker out, and, hopefully Bobby Knuckles can pull off the upset.
We're getting a lot of people obviously framing Cannonier versus Brunson as a title eliminator. If Whittaker wins this fight, is that still the case? Or do the UFC run the trilogy?
That's a good question. I hope not the trilogy, just for this. I mean, I just don't like seeing the same fight back to back.
Yes.
I mean, Israel has defended his belt, what, 3 times? Romero, Vittori, maybe only twice, right? Am I forgetting one?
Paulo Costa.
Pelican, yeah, yeah. So 3 times. I mean, he has probably earned his right to an immediate rematch. I mean, I feel like if the Blachowicz loss wasn't in there, like it would be a no-brainer for him to get an immediate rematch. Um, but I feel like that kind of does put like a stale taste in some people's mouths. So maybe if Whitaker wins, maybe they do Whitaker and the Brunson Cannonier winner, and then they'll do Strickland Adesanya in the meantime or something. So I don't know. That's a good question though. I feel like the UFC, the way they operate, though, they'll probably do the immediate trilogy.
Yeah. I'm personally in the same boat as you. Like, I personally think that Whittaker and Adesanya are both a step above the rest of the contenders. But for the sake of the weight class and the sake of freshening things up, ideally, I would like to see new fighters challenging for the belt. And that's no disrespect to either Adesanya or Whittaker, because I like both guys. I just want to see fresh faces.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean we've talked about that on this previous show a few times that uh, the top guys are kind of there's a big gap between the top five and everybody else, and that means we're kind of seeing a lot of rematches. I mean, the WME era has been notorious for rematches, so um, with definitely new matchups are the best. So hopefully we could get some of them instead of rematches. But really looking forward to the fight. I think they waited enough time between the first fight and this one to really build up some anticipation for the rematch. Whitaker has racked up some nice wins since then, so I think this is coming at the perfect time. And just really looking forward to this main event.